I'm Theo.
And I'm Juliet.
And this is Apologies Accepted.
We offer an entertaining look at some of the big issues in history by examining public apologies of the famous and infamous.
We're looking at politicians, serial killers, actors, and you.
Send us a public apology you would like to make, and we'll read it on the air and give you a chance to redeem yourself or just get some guilt off your shoulders.
We're here for you. Once a week, maybe more if you're really, really sorry.
Apologies Accepted,
the podcast.
And I'm not Theo.
And
this week is every week.
Have we too? I'm not Juliet.
We are not each other.
We're already confused.
And we're very happy this week because it's almost Thanksgiving, and we are both holiday whores and love the holidays and love Thanksgiving. Not as much as Christmas, but Thanksgiving is pretty awesome. At least I love Thanksgiving. I'm speaking for Theo here, but you better love Thanksgiving.
Oh, Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday, but I say that about every holiday.
Every holiday. From
Halloween, well, Thanksgiving and Christmas. New Year's, right. Arbor Day, Valentine's Day.
Yeah, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
What are you doing for Thanksgiving?
We have some friends who are coming over, and it'll just be 5 of us total. So my usual Thanksgiving dinner for 20 will have to be pared down.
They can all take leftovers home.
Ooh, I had not thought about that.
Give them cute little boxes to take leftovers home in.
Oh, what a fun idea. Yeah. So today I have to get the menu together, which isn't hard because it's basically the same menu every year. Turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, pumpkin pie. And that's all I need, and I'm fine. Some greens, or the green beans is a salad, fine, whatever, right? But, when other people are there, I want to have a dish that means Thanksgiving to them. Right? And I hate it when you go over to somebody's house for Thanksgiving and it's like,
stuffing.
We don't have pumpkin pie because we don't like it. Well, fuck you.
Yeah, right.
How dare you invite me to your house and not have pumpkin pie? Feed me for free, but not give me everything I want to eat.
So did you ask your guests what means Thanksgiving to them, and you're making it?
Yes, and I'm still waiting to hear answers.
Better fucking hurry up. It's not like you have the whole week to plan.
Oh, I've got 3 whole days.
Do you have a turkey already? I'm peppering you with questions.
No. So here's the goofy thing, right? I've been in the grocery stores, and I have lived in this country my whole life. I have been to the grocery store Thanksgiving season, right? And there's always like these end caps, and it's just Thanksgiving from the minute Halloween is over until Thanksgiving. It's like boxes and boxes of you name it. Right? Center aisles. I don't see it. It's nowhere.
Weird.
I don't see the piles and piles of turkeys. Like,
that's weird.
Trader Joe's had so many turkeys last year that they basically were spilling out of the meat cabinet. Sounds so gross. And it's like just a pile of them on the floor, right? Like turkeys everywhere.
Sanitary.
Yeah. No. Trader Joe's had like 5 Thanksgiving turkeys, and people were not beating each other senseless trying to get to them. But it was just like nobody even cared. I don't know. And so,
well, Amazon Fresh still has turkeys for like $5. So I'm telling you, get them delivered to you.
It's like nobody cares about Thanksgiving this year.
That's weird.
I don't see any pilgrim candles. I don't see a lot of Target did have the stuffed turkey, the pillow turkey, right?
Yeah.
So thank God for Target honoring the holiday.
Thank God.
But the grocery stores have just been real light on the Thanksgiving end caps and Thanksgiving, no boxes of powdered sugar in the middle of the baking aisle.
I wonder what Christmas will be like. They better come out for Christmas.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, that's, our only time where capitalism is really celebrated in America is at Christmas time.
Poor capitalism. It only gets Christmas.
Yeah. So all set for Thanksgiving. Real excited. It is the best. And then Christmas will be awesome, as it always is, but also a little goofy because we're going to be in the desert, and Christmas will be whatever I can fit into my car along with the dog in my suitcase, as opposed to all the things in my attic So
Well, you can always go shopping.
that's true. Huh.
I know you're trying to save money, but it's Christmas.
Well, yeah. Maybe I can just make some stuff by hand. Look, everyone,
Crochet a Christmas tree.
I made Christmas ornament. Yeah, and so I don't know. Aside from that, my one brag is, you may recall that last week we did an episode on the former editor-in-chief of Scientific American, who had resigned because she said some things about Trump supporters on her social media, and there was some pushback on that, and she apologized. But I liked her. I liked what she had to say. I thought all this stuff was cool, and so I followed her on social media, and then she put up a post about like the 25 foods that have changed America, and I reposted it. I liked it and I reposted it. And then she liked that I reposted it. And then I just mentioned that I was going to try the cocktail called The Last Word, which apparently revived American cocktail culture. And I'm going to say the article was actually really interesting. It talked about like Nestle's Toll House cookies and how that kind of reinvented cookies and chocolate chips and all that sort of stuff. And so great. And then apparently pre-prohibition era, 1933, I think. So before 1933, cocktail culture was like a thing, and you just went to bars and you had cocktails. Then prohibition came, and from about 1950 to about 1990, America just never got back into cocktail culture. And so cocktails were like, cranberry juice and vodka.
Right.
That was your cocktail.
Yeah.
Right. Could you get an old fashioned somewhere? Maybe if you were a raging alcoholic, you would know that like, old fashioned, it's got 12 different kinds of alcohol in it.
But some things like the Aviator or whatever, I'm sure you couldn't get, or it would be hard to get at a bar.
Or even just finding like a cool bar that was a bar that did cocktails, like just not a thing, right? You can go to a bar that serves predominantly beer, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Never really thought about it. I do remember when the Cosmo became a thing and was introduced, right? And that was once the basis that was my gauge for civilization. If I was in a city and I went into a bar and I asked for a Cosmo and they gave me one, great.
Yeah.
If they asked me what that was, I was in the middle of nowhere, right? So cool. So anyway, so the cocktail culture went away until it was kind of revived sometime in the 1990s. And what gets credited with having revived cocktail culture is this drink called The Last Word. And some guy in 2000 something. All this seems real goofy to me because I'm like, I'm sure there were cocktails well before all this.
I've never heard of this drink. And there were.
So in this article, the 25 foods that changed American cuisine, great. This drink is listed as being solely responsible for reviving America's love of the cocktail. So many people love this cocktail that I think they use chartreuse in it. And they used maraschino cherry liqueur. And the maraschino distillery noticed a giant uptick in sales. And so they traced it back to this bar and they thanked the bartender or whatever. I'll send you the article. You can read it. I'm doing a shit job explaining it. Anyway, I made this cocktail and it was terrible. It was so bad. And I was like, this is what revived America. Like an old fashioned is so much better than this nonsense.
What's in it?
Gin, cherry liqueur, lime juice, and chartreuse.
That's disgusting.
And it was not good. Now, maybe I'm not a good bartender. That is a possibility.
Well, that could be. But how can this be the drink that revived bar culture when I've never heard of it? If I've never heard of it, it is not responsible for reviving anything.
Exactly. But so I'll find that article. I will send it to you because it had some really cool stuff. Like the stuff about the chocolate chip cookie was just like fascinating beyond belief to me.
I'll read it while I'm making chocolate chip cookies.
There you go. And so that's it. I'll shut up because it has been a lot of rambling for not a lot of enjoyment.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Theo.
And
So-
what about you? What's shaking bacon?
I may or may not be going to North Carolina. Jesus Christ. New York on the 6th. I still haven't decided whether I'm going because I looked at the hotel cost and it's like $600 a night. I'll be there for 4 nights. So that's a little bit on the expensive side, especially since I'm still working only part-time. So probably I don't want to spend that money, but I'm thinking about it. I mean, do I have the money? I mean, I have savings.
And that's what they're for. They are for trips
that is
to
what
New York.
it's for. But I mean, if I'm going to spend $2,500 on a hotel, I want it to be in Finland. I don't want it to be in the United States of America. But so anyway, so we'll think about that, whether I'm going. Because I do want to see the Rockettes. I want to see what that's all about. And I want to check out the Christmas decorations. I mean, it's Christmas in New York.
The Christmas tree, the skating, the carolers
the
in the street.
windows, the markets, all that bullshit.
Macy's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to go, but I don't know. I want to spend like $5,000 for a weekend. So I asked ChatGPT if I should go, and ChatGPT was kind of leaning towards I should go. So I was like, but I have work. And ChatGPT was like, taking trips is a good vacation from work. You'll unload some stress and have a fresh perspective when you get back. I'm like, you're right, ChatGPT. I should go to New York. But anyway, so that leads to my question of the week is, do I want to pay $20 a month for ChatGPT? Because I ran out of my time. I was talking to it this morning and I got locked out and I have to wait till like 10 o'clock before I can ask it another question.
My God, how are you going to get through the next 40 minutes?
I don't know. But I was going to ask it if I wanted to pay $20 a month for it. And I have to wait till 10 o'clock to ask it that.
You should ask ChatGPT at 10:01 a.m.
I'm going to.
And then see what it says.
I will. I'm sure I know what it'll say. But I don't know. Do you pay for ChatGPT or do you just wait for the timeouts? Or do you use different GPT?
Didn't even know there was a lockdown on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't use it that often.
Yeah.
And
I've started just chatting with it and it's kind of interesting. So, I mean, it does bring some points up that I wouldn't have thought of. So
James does the same thing.
Does he do it for work or for business or pleasure?
Both.
Really?
Well, pleasure, that's probably more, but he uses ChatGPT like I use Google. So I will Google, I don't know, any random question, right? James uses ChatGPT to answer questions, and he uses it the same way that I use Google. So I go to Google for everything.
Oh, okay.
Right? What planet do I live on?
Right.
Google will tell me. He goes to ChatGPT. And he's a giant fan of it. He loves it. And so it's both a tool that he will use at work, right? Help me explain this thing better, right?
Yeah.
But then again, like I don't know, I can't think of a real life example.
I've started using it for work emails. Like I had to write an apology letter the other day because I made a mistake in something. And it was not anything really serious, but I didn't want to think about it on my own. So I asked ChatGPT to write me an apology letter and I described the circumstance and it did. And I heavily edited it to make it sound more like me.
Sure.
And less like AI, but it was great.
Yeah. No. I mean, seriously, I'm a ChatGPT fan. There was this question. So somebody on Blue Sky posted a thing that said, go to ChatGPT and type in the following, open quote, ChatGPT, based on all of our previous interaction, what is something that you know about me that perhaps I don't know about myself?
Oh, interesting.
And right, interesting question. And James did it and he got feedback and he was like, wow, I'm really surprised. That's actually kind of true.
I'm going to try that immediately at 10:01.
At 10. Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see what our future computer overlords will allow us to do.
It'll be the best of all possible worlds, I'm convinced.
I mean, things are only ever getting better. So
guess what else I'm doing? Speaking of things getting better.
Oh, what?
I'm going to see Hamilton this week. Have you seen Hamilton?
I have seen the Disney broadcast of the original cast.
Did you like it?
I have not seen. Oh, I loved it. I thought it was amazing.
I want to see that too, but I want to go. I'm going to go see it. Obviously, it's not the original cast or anything even close to it. But Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to see Hamilton. I'm totally excited. I don't know.
Oh,
if I'm
you're
gonna
so
like
lucky.
it, but excited anyway. Yeah.
You'll like it.
Do I need to listen to the soundtrack or whatever before it's not a soundtrack, it's something else, but
I would say no. I went in knowing very little about Hamilton outside of
American
everybody
history.
loves it and some vague historical stuff
Yeah.
in my head. Thank you, AP History. And I was blown out of the water by how inventive it was, how it brought the past current, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And just how impactful it was having the founding fathers played by people of color. It
cool.
really reframed the American Revolution for me. And, just amazing. Just amazing.
Awesome.
I'll stop there.
All right. I'll look forward to it. I am looking forward to it. I'll continue to look forward to it. So I think that's all my news for this week. Not doing anything exciting for Thanksgiving. I'm doing the best possible thing, which is staying at home with Brent and
eating corn.
Eating corn. Are we eating corn?
No, not fried corn. QUORN?
Oh, corn. Yeah. The vegetarian.
Tofurkey.
And real turkey, because I'm making a turkey for myself and the dog.
Okay.
So we're having both. We're not a vegan household, but maybe one day we will be. Anyway, let's talk about the story for this week. Why don't we?
Let's not, because it is a big story that is full of things that are just going to go in many directions.
We'll see. We may dispatch this with haste. You never know. I was going to run this through ChatGPT to get a different version.
To have it tell us what to do and say.
Yeah, but I didn't get a chance because I got locked out because I was busy discussing whether I should go to New York or not. So I'd like to thank the BBC for the information that you're going to hear. I believe it was largely from the BBC. So anyway, the Edinburgh Rape Crisis Center was told this week to pay nearly £70,000, which is like $50 million, and publicly apologize to a worker dismissed over her gender-critical beliefs. Rosslyn Adams has said it is her belief that people using a rape crisis center should have a choice whether they receive support from a man or a woman, and that sex is binary and everyone is either male or female. I mean, the two don't necessarily come from the other, but okay. Interestingly, and I did not know this, in the UK, the Employment Appeal Tribunal ruled in 2021 that gender-critical beliefs are protected under the Equality Act of 2010. This means it's unlawful to discriminate against someone because of their gender-critical beliefs. However, the protection of gender-critical beliefs is not absolute. The beliefs must be considered in the context of how they are manifested and how they impact the legal rights of others. For example, gender-critical beliefs do not justify misgendering transgender people. So I find all that very interesting, and I wonder how they draw that line as to what is legal and what isn't legal. But I guess we'll have a discussion about that at some point, probably this morning. The Rape Crisis Center began a disciplinary process and investigation after Ms. Adams sought clarity on how to respond to an abuse survivor who wanted to know if a support worker who identified as non-binary was a man or a woman. Tough question. Earlier this year, or not a tough question. I mean, the answer is no, right? Or yes.
And like I said, let's go for a drive.
Let's go for a drive, yeah.
Let's go to something different than this, yeah.
Less likely to get in trouble.
Well, let's hit it. I mean, so many of our podcasts air and then situations become resolved and we end up being heroes. So maybe this is a situation, a cultural moment that we're going to fix.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
It is great. We're going to do it.
We're going to fix it. And we're going to fix it by talking about it. And in the interest of talking about it, I'll tell you that earlier this year, a review found that the Edinburgh Rape Crisis Center had failed to provide women-only spaces, and that its CEO, who was a trans woman, or is a trans woman, but is no longer the CEO, her name was Midrul Wadwa. She was in a role that was for women only. They found that she had not acted professionally or understood the limits of her authority. The report also said that there was evidence that the actions of some ERCC staff had caused damage to some survivors, and that concerns had been raised that some women were excluding themselves from approaching rape crisis centers because of their approach to gender identity, meaning their inclusive approach. A tribunal had ruled earlier this year that the center had unlawfully discriminated against Rosslyn Adams, saying that management had conducted a heresy hunt against her. The tribunal found that investigations should not have been launched and was clearly motivated by a strong belief amongst the senior management and some of the claimant's colleagues that the claimant's views were inherently hateful. So if I understand what happened, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you did research this, she asked the management what to do when this person asked if the support worker was a man or a woman. And just because she asked what to do, they came down on her. Is that your understanding of the case?
So I love the BBC.
Yeah.
For the most part. And I'm going to say that in this instance, I feel like they left out some important details and some nuances missing. Because when I read the BBC article, I was like, oh, this sounds really bad. I don't like this woman, right? This
Ross
Adams.
Right.
And then I listened to a Scottish podcast this morning. Yes. And
you are devoted.
I'm devoted to the art of podcasting and to Scotland. And so this is from everything is about to follow, the Morton Fraser McRoberts podcast, or as we'd say in Scotland, the Morton Fraser McRoberts podcast. You're welcome, Scotland. Okay, so in great detail, this is how things unfolded, and this is what happened.
Okay.
The case of Rosslyn Adams against the Edinburgh Rape Crisis Center. This case looks at the clash of views between protected characteristics covered by the Equalities Act in the UK, and this comes against a background of various other employment law complaints revolving around issues of gender and a wider debate on gender identity and biological sex.
Uh-huh.
The question in particular is whether those holding gender-critical views and the ways in which they're expressing those views can be discriminated against by employers. It's echoing exactly what you said. What this case concluded is that Ms. Adams was subject to unlawful discrimination and that she was constructively dismissed. We'll explain that in a second. And that all this arose following her gender-critical beliefs. So constructive dismissal is very simply when the conduct of the employer is such that it's going to the heart of the employment relationship and the employee is justified in quitting, in canceling their work contract, right? Considering the employment is ended because employer, what you have done has gone against our work contract.
Okay.
Right. And that over-explanation is not for you. It's for Gen Z. And because they are stupid because they voted for Trump. Okay. Prior to Ms. Adams joining the ERCC, her work had been in the voluntary sector of sexual abuse. And one of the tribunal's finding, in fact, was that Ms. Adams had worked extensively with people who have trans identities and had worked well with them. Ms. Adams joined ERCC in February of 2021 as a counseling support worker. In terms of Ms. Adams' beliefs, and this is coming straight from the legal case where she had to explain her beliefs, her personal beliefs. In terms of Ms. Adams' beliefs, she does hold gender-critical philosophical beliefs, but it is important to note that there are some slight differences in this case compared to other legal cases in Scotland. Ms. Adams is supportive of individuals who are trans. She does not believe that gender identity is in all circumstances more important than biological sex. What she believes is that biological sex is, these are her words, real, important, immutable, in Gen Z that means not changeable, and not to be conflated with gender identity. So this is somebody who is, we'll say splitting hairs, but gender identity is different from biological sex. It feels safe enough to say that. She further does not believe that everyone has a gender identity. Okay, what?
All right.
But fine. Oh, well, maybe what she means is like non-binary, right?
Okay.
So if you're non-binary, you don't have a gender identity. You're non-binary. You don't have a gender. I'm putting that in there, right? Okay. But so she further does not believe that everyone has a gender identity, and she believes that biological sex is especially relevant in the context of sexual violence. Her view is that a trauma-informed approach in terms of supporting survivors of sexual abuse involves respecting the survivor's understanding of people as either male or female, and also respecting their choice about whether they would like to engage with male or female support workers. Her belief is that while in many circumstances the distinction between biological sex and gender identity may not be particularly relevant when supporting survivors of sexual violence, it's a slightly different situation in those circumstances when survivors are given the ability to choose who they are supported by, and that any questions that survivors have are answered in a clear and unambiguous way. So we'll get into a little background of what happened, right? Ms. Adams gave evidence in the tribunal, and she made it clear that before she even started working at ERCC, she was aware that ERCC, these are her words, had a mantra that trans women are women. She was aware of this philosophical belief before she had even started working at ERCC, as she had a friend who worked at the agency. Once Ms. Adams started working at ERCC, she believed that she saw that there were concerns in the way that gender issues were being dealt with. She became aware early on that those who wrote into the organization raising issues or who held gender-critical beliefs were classified as bigots, and that these inquiries were stored in a folder called hate emails. During Ms. Adams' employment at ERCC, there was a new chief executive appointed who happened to be a trans woman. Ms. Adams was initially happy with this appointment and didn't take any issues with a trans woman as CEO. Ms. Adams had the view that this appointment would be helpful because this would mean there was a broad variety of staff offering a wide range of counselors for victims to work with. To be clear, the tribunal found that Ms. Adams had no issue working with trans people, nor did she have any issue with trans people accessing ERCC services. But she did think it was important that survivors have an ability to choose who they were supported by on the basis of biological sex. Ms. Adams had a colleague who was identifying as non-binary, this is how everything started, and is referred to in the judgment with the initials of AB. The tribunal noted Ms. Adams' understanding, as well as other staff at ERCC, was that AB was biologically a woman but identified as non-binary. AB was changing their name at this point in time and chose a traditionally male name. After the name change, a survivor contacted ERCC requesting clarity and raising concerns that the support worker they were engaging with might be a biological male. Ms. Adams understood this email to be seeking clarity on whether the support worker was a biological male or female and purely looking at the question of biological sex as opposed to gender identity. Ms. Adams had contacted her manager proposing a response and also proposed checking with AB to directly discuss this issue, suggesting that in their response, AB could be identified as non-binary. There were a few emails between Ms. Adams and the manager discussing this issue. AB was upset by the emails and said the situation had caused AB to feel humiliated. A disciplinary investigation was commenced in relation to these emails, and Ms. Adams was invited to attend a disciplinary hearing concerning allegations of misconduct and gross misconduct. Ms. Adams was advised that she could be at risk of dismissal. The process unfolds, and ERCC's findings affirm the allegations, right? You're guilty. However, there was no sanction or penalty that was put in place. You're guilty. But that was that. Ms. Adams appealed the findings of the disciplinary hearing to no avail. Ms. Adams had also raised a grievance, which had gone through the grievance process and appeal process, which ultimately did not reverse original findings. So she had an opportunity to go through the HR process of saying, I don't like the outcome of this, and all the things were done that needed to be done in terms of employment processes. Ms. Adams then resigned and raised various discrimination claims, including claims for direct discrimination, indirect discrimination, harassment, and also a claim that she had been constructively dismissed. The Equality Act offers protections in respect to 9 characteristics, one of which includes religion or belief. Generally speaking, an employer cannot directly discriminate against any of its employees based on their protected characteristic. Employers cannot harass employees, nor can they subject any employees to unwanted conduct which creates hostile or degrading work environments. It's clear from previous legal cases in the UK that gender-critical beliefs fall within the scope of philosophical belief, which is worthy of protection under the Equality Act. In this case, Ms. Adams raised a number of different acts which she alleged were harassment, one of which was a suggestion that she was transphobic, right? You're finding that I'm transphobic is harassment. You're harassing me. The tribunal upheld all of Ms. Adams' claims. They took a dim view in respect of the ERCC's handling of the case, and there was particular criticism attached to the method in which the ERCC had conducted its own disciplinary process. The tribunal described ERCC's review process as somewhat reminiscent of the work of Franz Kafka. Many of these types of cases relating to gender-critical beliefs turn on a particular question of how the belief was manifested and whether the particular manifestation of the belief is acceptable or not. So you believe something, the way in which you conduct yourself in regards to that belief, do you conduct yourself in an acceptable manner or an unacceptable manner? In this instance, what the tribunal concluded was that Adams had conducted herself well. The tribunal looked at the question of constructive dismissal. They found it would appear that ERCC's CEO had indeed formed the view that Ms. Adams was transphobic, and this led to mishandling of the disciplinary process. They went on to say that Ms. Adams' resignation was caused by ERCC's unlawful breach of contract, and it was reasonable for Ms. Adams to believe that she could no longer have confidence moving forward that ERCC would comply with their obligation of trust and confidence towards her. So that's in great detail what happened, what unfolded, and I think it adds a layer of nuance that the BBC's article didn't have, right? But it does get to a bigger question that I have, and I've not worked in a rape crisis center ever. I've never worked in a mental health crisis center ever.
I have.
Right?
Yeah.
I have never been interested in working with mental health ever, really, professionally.
Well, you're not interested in helping people in general. So.
Well, no, of course not. Why? People are, have you met people? But once upon a time, my mother was a survivor of sexual assault, home invasion and sexual assault. It was a very bad situation. The situation is ever good. This was particularly horrible moment in her life. And watching her work through that over the years, and this was in the 70s when there just wasn't a lot of support for women.
Yeah.
Watching her work through that, you know, I mean, she was a hero, right? Mm-hmm. And after she died, I did have an interest in working at a rape crisis counseling center, but I wasn't sure what I would do because who wants to talk to the guy? Nobody, right?
Well, I mean, guys get raped too.
That hadn't occurred to me. I think this was probably like the 80s, 90s.
Yeah, they don't really think about that at the time.
It's somebody who gave it away for free. I never really thought about it in those terms. So I didn't see where I personally could work in a rape crisis center, right? So everything I'm about to say is coming from a place of ignorance. But I fully believe that survivors should always be supported and given anything and everything that they want. And I imagine a scenario where somebody comes in and says, I don't want to speak with a Black woman.
Sure.
Right? Okay. Your racism is not really the big issue at the table right now. And so let's find you a white one. Right?
Right.
But that, I imagine, would be illegal in the United States.
Right.
Right? However, come sue me.
It's the same question I have. I mean, exactly. I mean, what if you didn't want to speak, if you were raped by a Black person, you didn't want to speak to a Black person counselor?
Or an Asian or a white guy. Let's imagine
or a white person.
Woman of color who's like, I don't want a white worker.
Right, exactly. I mean, where does that become discrimination? And at what point also does transphobia, you said that the government or whatever said that the accusation of transphobia was in itself harassment, which is interesting to me. I'm not sure if I understood that correctly, but maybe I should ask ChatGPT.
If only ChatGPT was available to us.
Yeah, it's unfortunately not. So, but yeah, that's all very interesting stuff, and it is extremely complicated. And I'm glad I'm not working in rape crisis centers now, because I'm not sure what position I would take. I mean, I as I read more, and I've gone down the rabbit hole of this particular case and some of the law around it and some of the thinking about it, I've become more and more clear on what my thinking actually is. But I still have some questions, so it is complicated. And to go back to what's going on with this particular case, now, this week, Judge Ian McFatridge, which is an unfortunate name, ruled that the ERCC must publish an apology to Ms. Adams on its website, and that it must refer sexual assault victims to Barra's Place, the Edinburgh Women's Refuge where Ms. Adams now works, which is funded in part by J.K., I never know how to say her name, Rowling,
I believe, yeah. What a surprise she makes an appearance in this story. Wow. What?
How did that happen? Rowling provided a statement supporting Ms. Adams on formerly Twitter X, stating her priority had been survivors of rape and sexual assault. She said, aside from being a highly qualified support worker, Ross is a person of bravery, integrity, and compassion. Ms. Adams said, my priority remains that all victim survivors of sexual violence can make a genuinely informed choice about the services they seek and have confidence in who will support them. To restore that confidence, I urge these organizations to give a clear definition of woman. And I'm not sure that would solve the problem either, but okay. According to the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the definition of woman can include trans women who have a gender recognition certificate, which is ridiculous, I think. However, it is legal in the UK to prevent trans women, including those with a gender recognition certificate, from applying for a woman-only role if it is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. All right. The Rape Center said it was striving to improve and already acting on recommendations made. Judge McFatridge ruled that it was extraordinary that the ERCC had never referred any victims to Barra's Place and that this seemed linked inextricably with the matters which led to the discrimination against the claimant. He said that ERCC management appeared to consider the gender-critical views of Barra's Place, funded by J.K. Rowling, to be intrinsically hateful and transphobic. The ERCC had sent Ms. Adams a letter in September saying it apologized for the discrimination you faced while working at ERCC and for the stressful process you have been through. However, Ms. Adams argued this was not satisfactory as it did not clear her name publicly and that the apology was based around language used. Judge McFatridge agreed, calling the apology defective and stating it was a fact that nothing the claimant did constituted bullying or harassment. Ms. Adams said that without a public apology, she feared being seen as transphobic as she continued to work in the sector. The tribunal in May had ruled that the decision to launch a disciplinary process against Ms. Adams was because the center's management wanted to make an example of her because of her gender-critical beliefs, which clashed with the views of Madrul Wadwa, the center's CEO, who since resigned from the role. Let's see. There was a statement on November 6th from the board, which was, I guess, found to be insufficient. And the statement basically said, well, it did say this, the tribunal concluded it was a challenging and complex case, and we have learned a lot during this process. Using this learning, we are striving to improve the services we offer and the support we provide to service users, staff, and volunteers. It also goes on to say, we recognize that during the employment tribunal with Ross Adams, we did not act in the right way. We want to publicly apologize, and we understand that Roz's actions were not motivated by transphobia, but by a genuine wish to act in the best interest of service users. We should have listened more to Roz's concerns and never pursued disciplinary action, and for that we are sorry. Steps have already been taken to address the outcomes of both the tribunal and recommendations provided by Rape Crisis Scotland. Our focus for the future is ensuring we can provide survivors with the best possible service and support they need to aid their recovery. We are committed to ensuring that ERCC is a safe, accessible, and inclusive service for all. We have information on our services, including our women-only services, on our website. We want to reassure all survivors who are currently accessing our services and anyone seeking support that we are here for you and you matter to us. So that's everything but the apology, which they were forced to put on their website on November 18th, which was just a couple of days ago. Any thoughts? Beyond what you've already contributed, which is significant.
Yeah. And important. You left that word out.
And
too.
Important.
And important. Significant and important.
Yeah.
So as an outsider, right, I don't work at the agency. I think I don't even know that the people that work at the agency would have a clear understanding of all the ins and outs of all this.
Yeah.
But at the risk of being overly simplistic, being forced to apologize.
Right. It's not so great.
So great.
It's okay for Roz because she does get an apology, and as she said, like, she's still working in the field, so to speak, and she can point to the apology as an outcome of the whole mess, which probably helps her get a job in the future. But
trans women are sexually assaulted and do access rape crisis centers, and she in the future may be denied employment.
Right.
Based upon the belief that she's transphobic and then would not be. And so this is helpful to her. Yes. And I don't think that she is transphobic. She's not coming off as transphobic to me.
No, she's not.
Based off of what came through the court transcripts.
Right. But there are people who would say that any questioning of any gender critical belief is transphobic, and you see that a lot in social media. And you can't even talk about it. You're not supposed to question that trans women are women, or that non-binary people are not binary, and that there should ever be any concern or any question about that is transphobic. So.
And potentially maybe, right? Because I have accepted that I'm racist on some level spectrum,
sure.
Right? And that I have racist tendencies and reactions that I have learned to monitor for, right? The whole Black Lives Matter movement and era was quite a critical time for people like you and me, where we were very self-reflective. Right. Mm-hmm. And surprised at some of the things we discovered about ourselves. And so, yeah, on some level, we're all misogynistic. We're all homophobic. We're all, but again, it's a spectrum, and I think it's a matter of what you do with it.
I think that's all very true. And I wonder, though, if the right thing to do is to suppress all discussion of it. Like, should you not discuss racism because the person is racist? Do they not get to say, if they're having an honestly open, frank discussion about their beliefs, should that be suppressed because it's racist? But
see, so there's the tricky part, right? Because are they having a genuine conversation, or are they taking an opportunity to spew hate? But
let's just say they are having an open, honest discussion.
Yeah.
So let's say that I want to say, why is Joe Smith, formerly Joe Smith, a woman now? How is that possible? He is biologically male. How come I have to call him her? I really honestly don't understand. Should that kind of conversation be suppressed because it's transphobic?
Short answer is no, right? The only way to get through any of the phobias is to discuss them and reach a point of understanding. And understanding, hi friends, does mean meeting a middle ground. And sometimes that means inching away from your sincerely held belief, whatever that sincerely held belief is, to a point where you can say, all right, other people have different viewpoints, and that's okay.
Yeah, is it okay to have different viewpoints, I guess? And the UK appears to think Yes, it is okay. And the gender critical people should be protected. In the U.S., I think it's a little bit different. I think gender critical thinking, well, it depends on who you are. If you're liberal, it's one thing. If you're a MAGA person, it's another. So I guess I shouldn't generalize. Oh, goodness.
We are going to solve this today, though. That is our goal.
We can solve one thing, and that's whether or not the apology is acceptable.
Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and do that. Yes.
Okay. So on November 18th, the apology was published on the website of the Edinburgh Rape Crisis Center, and it said, further to our statement of 8th November 2024, which I just read to you, Edinburgh Rape Crisis Center apologizes to Rosslyn Adams for having alleged that she was transphobic and acknowledges that there was no evidence to support that allegation. Its disciplinary decision that Ms. Adams had misconducted herself was wrong. Ms. Adams was motivated by a wish to act in the best interest of service users when she questioned how to respond to a service user, as detailed in the Employment Tribunal judgment dated 14 May 2024. Nothing Ms. Adams did constituted bullying or harassment, and it accepts the Employment Tribunal's findings that it harassed and discriminated against Ms. Adams because of her protected gender-critical beliefs. Bearers Place provides an alternative source of support for female victims of sexual violence. A link to the Bearers Place website is here. Linky. So I actually think that the statement of November 6th was a little bit better than the official apology. It did it did say that they were apologizing and did talk about the things they were doing in the future to address the issue. So I like that more. I thought that there were none of our criteria present in the apology of November 18th. So it gets a 0 from me, and I do not accept it. I think it was like you said, it was a forced apology, and you could tell.
Exactly. 0 for me, and I also do not accept it. And unfortunately, happily you and I are fully in sync on this one, right? But it's unfortunate given the subject matter.
Yes.
Yeah. Forced apology, and it reads like we're being forced to say this, but we don't want to.
Exactly. Find that disappointing, but perhaps not surprising. Do you accept the apology? I'm guessing no. Okay.
No. Yeah. So 0 and I would not accept it. Right. And I'm a little surprised to find out that there's a rape crisis center that actively did not engage with another center.
Right.
I would think like we're all in this together. I get that there's a limited pool for funding. I get that there might be some concerns around.
Are you talking about the Glasgow Rape Crisis Center?
Oh, no, I'm talking about J.K. Rowling's Sarah.
Oh, the Bearers Place
yeah.
one. Oh, yeah. Okay. Because there was another rape crisis center in Glasgow, which I think refused to take funding from the Rape Crisis Centers of Scotland or something because of this issue. But that's another story for another day.
Well, they're going to have to apologize, or somebody's going to have to apologize. Yeah. Yeah. And, I guess for me, I'm putting myself back in that situation because I don't want to say it's an interesting question, but it is an interesting question, right? Mm-hmm. What do you do? And I'll move back towards racism because I feel like that's easier to discuss. But then I shouldn't be discussing it. Hey, look over there.
We'll grant you permission this one time to discuss racism.
Okay, yeah, it's better that I don't say anything at all.
Okay.
than perform a thought experiment out loud publicly on this issue.
Okay. So we may not have solved anything, but we did come to a conclusion that the apology was unacceptable, and unsuccessful. This podcast is pro-trans. So it's pro-trans.
Of course, we're pro everyone. We're anti-Nazi. We're anti-fascist. Yes. We are Antifa.
Yes. We're just on the right side of every issue.
Duh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which was a perfect response. Yeah. So on this one, big tough issue.
All right. So I think on that note, we may
after all that,
that 3-hour podcast, we will pause for the week. I think we'll be back next week, unless you've got Thanksgiving activities to attend to. I think we'll see you on Sunday. So stay cool, cucumbers.
And don't trip potato chip.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Apologies Accepted, the podcast.
You can find links to the articles and the sources in the show notes.
To submit an apology or find out more, visit us at apologiesaccepted.net, where you can also find our merchandise.
We're on Twitter at Apologies Accepted.
And on Instagram at apologies.accepted.
You can support our important work at Patreon.com/Apologies Accepted.
And fuck Facebook.
Bye.
Bye.